Hello, this is Mike, NoStressMike.com. This is number two, part two, on how to lie for self-defense. Okay, I left off when I was talking about I went to Vietnam and came back. Like I say, I was 19. I was out, and then like I don't know how many, but a lot of Vietnam veteran or maybe veterans in general, but I did a lot of drinking, going over my experiences, trying to live with myself for the stuff that I did in Vietnam. And finally, smoking, coffee. I was drinking 30 cups of coffee a day, uh, drinking a lot of beer, whiskey. I mean, it wasn't a pretty thing, and it took me a couple of years of abusing myself before. A week before my 21st birthday is when I figured out, I just may live. And if I'm going to live, I probably better start taking better care of myself. I mean, I wasn't even sleeping 2 or 3 hours a day. I didn't do drugs. I've never done drugs. I don't even do medical medicine stuff except for emergencies. Antibiotics. Something like and that's short-term stuff. But so and then I told my dad, okay, I'm ready to get married now, and see. So I was raised in Chinese culture here in the United States, and it was arranged marriage. And so then, so my dad was getting the word out, and finally, that's where I got my wife for 41 years. And so anyway, I got her. She was arranged marriage. Just turned 22, and then she was all Chinese, and she was born and raised in Guatemala, and they've owned businesses down there. So she knows, like me, she's been self-employed all her life. So she knows all this stuff, and she knows commitment, what commitment means. And being Chinese, she knew her role, and she knew my role. You she didn't put up with me not manning up. When it's time for me to man up, she wanted me to man up. She didn't want no excuses. She wanted me to do what a man does because she knew there was woman things and there was man things, and I had to do the man things. So, so we got married at 22. She was 21, and then like I say, back in the restaurants, started doing restaurants and doing all that. When I was 29, I realized I saw the people in the restaurant business. It's very hard work. And I saw my dad. Well, my dad ended up dying when I was, see, my kids were just born. So, like 25, my dad died. And the restaurant killed him. And it was just too much hard work. And that's when I figured out I need to find something else to do. And so I ended up going into the oil business from 29 years old to 35 years old. I got videos on all this stuff, just little sections, a video talking about what I learned during that particular thing. And then at 35 is when the oil business just collapsed. I mean, it was less than 2 months. I was making good money, and then down to I didn't go bankrupt, but I lost everything. And I said I got videos on all this. And what I learned from that is up to that point, I owned my own restaurants. When I was in the oil business, I owned all my equipment. I owned oil leases, my own oil wells. I had all this stuff. But what I learned is when you own something, they really target you. And it's not that I drove fancy cars and lived in fancy houses and stuff like that. It's just the idea that I had something, and then that's made me a target for government At that time, I already didn't know what bandits were, but criminals. By this time, the racial stuff was over. It got over. Golly, I had kids, and then so it'd been in the mid '70s, maybe is when the racial stuff kind of went away, and then so from the oil, I went back into the restaurant business, and that's really where I made my money. The money that I've made is I made it in that, and it's not like I drove fancy cars and had fancy houses. Same thing. When you appear, you have something. You're targeted. Now I'm sure it's different with other people, but that's what I got out of it. So that's basically when I started with the gold and silver, and then I went to restaurant business, like I say, and matter of fact, I pumped gas for 2 years, and they couldn't believe I made so much money in tips from pumping gas. Uh, and that's because I serve people. I like people. I like helping people. And then right around 40, and I've mentioned this before, 40, you get to a point where you start feeling pain. And hey, you start feeling pain. And so then that's when I started in, what do you call it, health. And I started learning acupuncture, and that didn't work out well. It was acupuncture was really complicated. And then that's when I started figuring out how Hui Chi works. And that's why I started developing Hui Chi. And then, and the reason was I had a supper club, and it was open 5 in the evening till midnight. So I had all day to do all kinds of stuff. So I practiced getting myself in better shape. Matter of fact, I re-enlisted for the Desert Storm, and I told them then I was too old. And they said, "Well, you're too old." And I said, "Okay, well, here's my phone number. Here's my service number. And just give it to somebody." And then 2 days later, they got a hold of me. And then I went and took a physical and, all this kind of stuff. But anyway, I got over, Desert Storm got over so fast, I didn't have to go. But anyway, what I learned out of that is I can't keep that young man type stuff all the time. Physically, I can't keep my body in that shape. And I did at 40, except for, like I say, it was tough. And but anyway, so I had this supper club. So like I say, I went to college and I started learning how the body works and this type of stuff. I had problems in college, and well, I have a problem with authority, so that didn't work out all that good. But anyway, I learned and applied all that, and I was started doing paintballing, and when I was doing the paintball, then the police came to me and they said, "Hey, we want to borrow your paintball guns for training SWAT." And I said, "Hey, no problem." And I said, "Matter of fact, if I join you, I could run the paintball guns and I can do something." And that's how I got involved with training SWAT. And so that'd been about 40 years old, early 40s. And I continued that, let's see, at, I don't know, late 80s and up until 2000 something or another. And then at that time, SWAT was into hostage rescue. That's why my specialty is hostage rescue. Tell people I'm counterterrorism. Hostage rescue is my specialty. That's how I got started in it. I started finding out how hostages react, how criminals do their thing when they're holding hostages, kidnapping, and this type of stuff. And so that's where I got my experience in that type of stuff. And then at let's see, 52, that was it. I was having so many problems at the club. don't want to get into that. But anyway, I got videos on it. And anyway, so that's when I stopped, no more work. And we moved to Guatemala, Central America, where my wife was from. And so we started there, and then I started traveling around Central America and Mexico on the motorcycle with my dog. I had another dog, Xena, and and I got videos on all that about we'd travel around and do work down there. And then, and I don't work for government. The only time I've worked for the government was when I was in the Marines. And so I don't do it. I work for individuals. And that's where I talk about, south of the border, when you have people being kidnapped and hostage taken and this type of stuff, it's normally military or police. Why? Because they're the ones that have the guns. And so that's how I got involved in all that. And so lived down there for a long time. And then my wife had one stroke, and then she had another stroke. And when her second stroke, she was paralyzed. And so I took care of her for 5 years. I took care of her before she finally died. And that was through voodoo. And I've got videos a little bit talking about that. Because most Americans, most people don't know and understand what it is and how it works, so I didn't get in much depth in it. But anyway, that's how that was. And then it ended up, I left, I stayed there after she died, and got videos going. That's like I say, I was making videos. When she had her stroke, I was taking care of her for 5 years. And at that time, she knew, hey, I'm not like sitting around. So I had to learn how to run a computer. I wrote 5 books. They're not really good. And like I say, I didn't even make them to be books. But my wife said I need to write and share my experiences. And this is why I started making videos. made videos after she had her stroke too. And because I couldn't go anywhere, so I had to stay with her, kind of like out here in the farm. Couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. But here I do the same old thing, just cut grass and maintain and just be here. And down there it was a different lifestyle. And so, but anyway, so I did all this, and all of let's see, and there's a whole lot more besides all that. And like I say, I got videos on all this, and but anyway, so having this experience opened the door for a lot of things. Besides that experience, getting into situations where I've had to deal with corrupt police, corrupt military, bandits, criminals, white collar crime. I had to deal with lots and lots of bad stuff. And the price is death when you lose. You either go to jail if you're messing with the government, or like you say, you're kidnapped, you're tortured, killed, all kinds of weird stuff happens. These are the kind of things that got me to this point. Now, we're going to go to the third, and that looks like it's going to be the final part, but the third video in this series. And I'm going to go into more detail on the lying part itself. But like I say, it's all based on my experiences. The same thing for you. You need experiences. Don't avoid all these problems. I never avoid problems. I just jump right in whenever these problems. Well, normally I don't even know about these problems until bammo, I'm surrounded with this problem, and then I got to do something about it. And but like I say, I'm not out here on the farm. I'm living life. I say 14 years in driving, traveling around Central America and Mexico. almost 2 years in Asia, in China, running around over there, new experiences, new situations, new problems. So this is what everything's based on. But anyway, so now we're going to go to part 3. This is Mike, NoStressMike.com.